Just Politics, Our Worldview, live on Facebook every Sunday from 5 p.m. till 7. It's the podcast about politics in Barbados, the region, and the wider world. Now, here are your hosts, Ayo and Terry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 3 of our weekly live show, Just Politics, Our Worldview, where we discuss politics in Barbados, the region, and the rest of the world. Welcome back to our regular viewers. I see some of you there. Welcome, Sandy. Thank you for being here. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for being here. If you're new to our show, please note that you can find us here live every Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. Also, if you miss this live feed, you can rewatch right here anytime after, or the podcast version on your YouTube on our YouTube channel each week. We're also streaming on YouTube, so if you feel free to watch us over there. I am your host, Ayo Olalara, with my co-host, Dr. Terry Harris. Good evening, Terry.
Good evening, Ayo. Welcome back, guys. So this week we will be chatting with Mr. Toney Olton on the topic enhancing learning outcomes through social and emotional learning. But first, as become customary now, a word from our sponsor. So this week's episode is brought to you by Desert Properties Inc. You can contact them at 624-0593 or by email at desertpropertiesinc@icloud.com. For all your construction, renovations, and interior design needs, you can give them a call with the real estate questions, whether short-term or long-term rentals, to sell or even purchase your dream home. It's your one-stop shop for all things properties. Thank you again for joining us. And Ayo, back over to you for hot topics. What is on the menu for hot topics this week, Ayo? Let me guess. That slap heard around the world.
Well, since you want to talk about that first, let's talk about that first. The Will Smith, Chris Rock saga, since everybody's talking about it. So the problem with us, we don't get to talk about things early because we come on Sundays and they happen. I think this happened last Monday, which is the day after we were on. So we are now going to have our opportunity to talk about it. Will Smith, the Will Smith, Chris Rock saga continues, as most of you know. Unless you're living on the rock, you've also heard about it by now. And like every other person, you've likely formed your own opinion. And, here's mine. Will Smith is dead wrong for slapping Chris Rock. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get that out of the way.
Agreed.
And Chris Rock is dead wrong for reading that joke about Jada. Let's just put that out there also. And why I say that is because Chris Rock did a bunch of research and produced and starred in a movie about the problematic about Black women and their hair. And I feel like when he saw that joke in the script, because we all know that they don't write these scripts themselves, that he should have scratched it out. Because I feel like more than most, he understands the issues intimately. He is a man who has made millions of the issues that Black women face with their hair. So I feel like he should have been more responsible when it comes to the topic. I'm not really that invested in the lives of three multi-millionaires. I feel Chris Rock and Will probably are billionaires. What I was most appalled at, though, is the response in these internet streets. The responses from average people like me and you.
Well, the internet, average people on the internet. Come on, yo, be serious.
The average people on the internet.
Yeah,
and
quote
in,
unquote.
and in the media, and some people even took the time
No,
to
I
write
tell you, manic
articles
depressants,
to
manic depressants.
newspapers and so forth. So yeah, I know everybody right now is, they're suddenly experts in feminism and trauma and psychology as it relates to Black women. And I found it interesting, particularly the argument that Jada has agency and Will Smith infantilized her, really, by defending her, because there's this idea that somehow he infantilized her by defending her. Black women, Black women have been out here fighting for agency over their hair and over their person for decades. I have a memory that stuck with me from age 7 or 8. I believe I've told Terry this story before, of a woman who was fired right here in Barbados from a hotel. This was either in the late 80s or the early 90s. I was at primary school, for wearing braids to work. And it stuck because it might have been traumatic for me as a little Black girl, to be presented with the idea that there was something so wrong about a hairstyle which I saw women all around me wearing, that it could have been worn in polite company, and that it was so wrong that it caused a national outrage at the time. And as a child growing up in a Rastafarian home, to my mind, women and girls with hair and braids and so forth were to be othered or outcast, are considered lower class, who didn't know how to present publicly. And I distinctly remember at school, I'm not going to call the name of the school, but if you know where I went to primary school, you know the school. I distinctly remember two Black women, two teachers at the school, reading the newspaper. It was a front page photo. I can still see the braids and everything. I think she had some beads, some wooden beads on them. I don't know, but something stick with you, and that stuck with me. And told the teacher, there were 3 teachers there, 3 Black women, and 2 of them were saying, well, she should have known better. Why would she wear her hair to work like that, to work with white people? And the 3rd teacher, she was saying, banana wrong with she hair? I don't understand what I mean. That's bare foolishness, and that was the conversation that was happening there. And I sat there eating my lunch. I was kind of enthralled by this conversation, and I feel like even if I didn't understand all the nuances and problematics at that age, I certainly knew that there was something wrong with the thinking of some adults. And that stuck with me. And I know I kind of drift off a bit, but the point I'm making is that the idea that Black women have to fight for agency in every other instance, but is somehow expected to magically have this agency when her man defends her against another man, mind you, is so problematic to me. And it's specifically because of these instances that I identify my feminism as Black or African. I don't just say I'm feminist, because there's a lot that comes with that. The whole intersectionality debate and everything comes with that. So I always say I'm a Black feminist, I'm an African feminist, even though the two might not necessarily be interchangeable. Whole other discussion. I want to remind people, though, that Emmett Till died at the hands of a mob of white men because white women claimed that he whistled at her. Just recently, a couple years back, a mob of white men turned Barbados upside down and allegedly assaulted a Black man when a white woman went missing a couple years back, right here on this island. We don't get that kind of response to missing Black girls and women. Right? White men rush to the defense of their women, and there's no conversation around the idea of if those women are being infantilized or if those women have agency. And this is not necessarily me comparing us to white women, but this are white people. But this is me stating that Black women deserve to be protected and defended also. And I'm sure that anybody could see the danger in expecting a woman to be solely responsible for her own defense against men. And I know I've taken the conversation a little bit further than just a joke about here, as some people call it. But if you can't see how it's all related, then you've never been a Black woman that have been assaulted physically or otherwise, or you simply want to dismiss our reality. So I know I'm ranting a little bit, but before I stop, let me just say that there's some other views that kind of irritated my very sensibilities. One in particular is the idea that Jada made him do it. Because essentially, in one breath, what we're saying is that Jada should have had agency to defend herself against a man. But in the other breath, Will has none. And is being controlled like a puppet by his wife. But why is that important? Do you know how many times abused women go to the courts only to be asked by the magistrate, what will you do to make the man hit you? Or how many times police respond to disputes and decide that the woman must have done something to make the man abuse her? And we need to make these connections, I believe, to understand how these types of narratives put women in danger. For many people, this entire episode is Jada's fault, even though Jada never once uttered a single word or left her seat for the entire evening. And you got to understand that for many Black women, that view is not even peculiar, even though it should be. And I believe that men have a lot of questions to answer. I remember when Ciara was with the rapper Future, and he was psychologically abusing her publicly. He was cheating on her, getting multiple children from multiple women. And Ciara was the butt of all the jokes on the internet. And when she finally left Future and she married this footballer, Russell, who was a perfect gentleman, Christian, gentlemanly, compassionate, and loving husband and father, those same men to this day call Russell a simp and all manner of names. And it's something that I do not understand. Of course, I don't get in these conversations, but I read them. Because it's almost as though y'all don't believe that Black women deserve to be loved and protected. Or maybe it's because many of you have never seen your mothers being loved and protected. That also is a problem in our community. But this whole conversation is not really about celebrities, you know. But I want to ask yourself that if affluent, successful women can be treated in this way on the internet and in the media, what is happening to average Black women in private? What are they going through? One more thing before I finish this rant. All the hypotheticals floating around, I actually think they're pretty ridiculous. Would he have slapped The Rock? Would he have slapped Eddie Murphy? But you know the one question that nobody asked? Would the writers have written a similar joke about a white woman, and would Chris Rock have read it? Because there's something that happens in our minds where we believe that Black women are strong enough to take a joke. They're strong enough to take a punch. They're strong enough to take any type of pain and just shake it off and continue. Because that's what we do, because we have to. But we shouldn't have to. That's the problem. We should not have to. A part of the problem is that when Black men treat Black women the way that they do publicly, they open the doors for other people to do the exact same thing. And right now, you know, some of you, Terry probably included, saying I'm exaggerating. But let me read what white comedian Tom Segura, that's his name, what he said the exact day after the whole thing happened. And he's a Netflix comedian. And let me use some language, some strong language, because this is the language that he used. That bitch being bald, jokes about her is fine. It is tame as fuck, AF. You super sensitive about it, buy your effing wig. And I know some people claim, you know, well, Chris Rock didn't know she had alopecia, blah, blah, blah. But this is after the entire planet knew if they didn't know before, and I certainly knew because I watched a documentary, that she had alopecia. But we had opened the door for her to be treated like this. And then there's this comment that I saw languishing quite proudly on Rihanna's internet. And this is only one of many. And I will hold his first name. I won't call his first name. Just going to refer to him as K. Smith. How comes the man don't get the same understanding if he beat the shit out of his woman because he loved her too strong? That's his words. I ain't correct the English. That's exactly what he wrote. But this is why I don't argue with y'all. This is why I avoid most of these conversations on social media. The conversation surrounding this incident is not about Smith or Rock or any celebrity. The conversation is really about who we are as a society. It is about our response. That's the end of my rant.
Well done.
Anything to add, Terry?
Not particularly. I think you said everything that needs to be said in the rant. You know my views on this. So nothing much to add here. With regards to the slap, he should not have hit him. But I think we just need to accept Bill's explanation for why he did what he did and leave it at that.
Anyway, moving on. That was discussed for the entire week. It's almost 2 weeks. I'm not discussing it again. I just want to say my piece because I'm quite disappointed in a lot of people who should know better. Anyway.
You need to not allow social media to send you off.
I didn't go off yet.
All the time. A lot of the people that first thing, you can't use social media to judge the opinions of any population. And I find that too many people like to do that when, of course, it is completely unscientific.
Are you saying I'm doing that? I'm responding to very specific comments that were made. All right, good.
I think I'm allowed to say what I have to say.
Please go on.
Yeah, thank you. Use social media as some sort of basis to draw conclusions about the views of sets of people. Bad idea. Right? Not a good idea. Unscientific, doesn't make a lot of sense. It's skewed. So I would refrain from using it to do things like that, and also to like set you off. There are a lot of miscreants on social media. We know this, and you're gonna get a lot of unfortunate comments on social media about this incident and about other incidences. Right?
Yeah, but the problem is that I don't necessarily have a lot of miscreants on my page. At least I didn't think so. I know now. But anyway, let's continue.
Social media.
It's a whole different conversation. It's something about being behind a keyboard, I think, that gives people some kind of bravado to make them say things that they generally wouldn't say publicly.
This is something that's been observed in reality. So yeah, so don't allow it to.
But this is why you take it seriously, because that is their inner thoughts that they wouldn't have. That what you do psychology, the it and the what's that again? That's their person that they necessarily won't show publicly. That they're showing publicly because they don't realize that they're actually public. Do you understand what I mean? But anyway, I take your point.
But like I said, don't become too disillusioned with what you see out there.
Disillusion. I'm making a point about one thing.
Yeah, you're harping on it.
I am definitely.
You're harping on this point. Yeah, we spoke about it. I think we share similar views with respect to the whole incident that occurred in the aftermath of and the reaction from the various communities. Online is a bad place to find reasonable people. I think we know this. So don't expect that. Don't let it set you off. We have a lot of.
Trying to understand what this man thinks is
mental illness.
I said what I said.
Mental illness online. Yeah, you said what you said because of what you saw online. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue. Another thing, a lot of you guys, I usually take suggestions from you about what we should include in hot topics because at the end of the day, this is your show. A few of you have been messaging me, asking me to speak on a new article about the girls at GIS. What I will say is that because I'm also a board member, I can't speak in depth on the happenings at those institutions. I would caution you, however, to query everything that you read in the press and ask yourself if it makes sense, if it is sensationalized, and what does anybody have stand to gain by leaking news to the press about children's behavior, especially if it is not in protection of those children. I like to think that I'm a principled individual, and I certainly will not sit in a space quietly by and allow untoward things to happen to children. So that's it on that. Don't ask me any questions. That's it. I can't comment on that. So you move on to the Ukraine war, the war between Ukraine and Russia. It's an interesting, there's an interesting development happening right now. Coming out of this war, Putin is demanding that foreign buyers pay for Russian gas in rubles and or have their supplies cut. European capitals are obviously rejecting this demand, and Germany has declared it to be blackmail. This policy really and truly can cut into Europe, to Europe losing more than a third of its gas supply and could lead to rationing in Germany, which is Europe's biggest economy and the most reliant on Russia. But now Goldman Sachs is warning that the United States dollar is at risk of losing its dominance and could end up a lesser player, much like the UK pound. According to a report, which was done by a researcher at Goldman Sachs, remember her name, the US's tough sanctions on Russia have raised concerns that countries around the world could try to move away from the dollar and the US foreign debt, and that US foreign debt could move away from the dollar, and that the US foreign debt could mean that foreign investors may become reluctant to hold dollar assets. A couple of weeks ago, Money Man Tez, as white girl, I know she's here, Bethany calls him, in a conversation with me, he said that those sanctions could actually spell trouble for the world's economy. I feel like we have to pay attention to these developments, Terry, as a nation, because right now our dollar is actually pegged to the US dollar. What does this mean for all of us? What does this mean generally, and what does this mean for us here in the global South, Terry?
I wish I knew the answers to all those questions. I could hazard some guesses. First thing, Russia's not sanctioning. Russia is not like sanctioning, Cuba or Venezuela or Iran or North Korea or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even in those cases, these unilateral sanctions don't seem to work, right? We've had unilateral sanctions on Cuba since the 1960s from North America, right? Well, from the USA. We've had the West has imposed sanctions on Venezuela, Iran, North Korea, all unilateral, by the way. According to the individuals who, tell me about international law, I'm not an international lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, full stop. There's these things are suspect in terms of international law, but so first thing, they don't seem to work. And now you're sanctioning a major economy. The main flaws in sanctions seem to be that there are a number of carve-outs. So when these sanctions are thought up and implemented, carve-outs are put in place for various interests. And in the case of Russia, we have carve-outs. So these carve-outs help the sanctioned economy to still get revenue. In the case of Russia, Russia's the main gas supplier to Europe, right? Main gas supplier to Germany. They can't just turn off that tap, right? So even in the midst of these sanctions, which a lot of other countries are now being asked to comply with, so we're all in the global South, all of the third party, and there's another problem with these sanctions, in fact. But all countries are in fact are being asked to comply with these unilateral Western sanctions. To be honest with you, but the West, who thought up these sanctions, obviously made carve-outs for themselves to suit themselves. So you're asking India, China, you're asking Africa, don't do any business with Russia, while Russia's doing mega millions in business with Germany, right? With the West. It's kind of hypocritical. So that's another issue with these sanctions. They end to be kind of hypocritical. And because you're asking individuals to not do business with Russia while you yourself are still doing business with Russia. It's ridiculous. And you're asking countries like India, countries like, of course not. You're never surprised at these things. People tell me I'm a cynic, but I think I'm a realist. You were never surprised at these things. The third parties, countries like, again, India, countries like China, countries like South Africa, countries all around the other countries who had no role in actually formulating these sanctions and not being asked to comply with sanctions, where these sanctions have within them carve-outs to suit the individuals who thought them up. It doesn't make any sense. It's crazy, right? So. That's another issue with them. Another issue with them is that they're a form of siege warfare, and they ultimately only end up hurting the people, not the leadership. So sanctions hurt the people, not the leadership. And of course, if you're going to be restricting supplies of commodities, if you sanction any country, you're obviously going to structurally lock in higher prices for the products that country produces. Now imagine sanctioning one of the major energy producers on planet Earth, one of the major commodity producers on planet Earth. Of course, you're going to lock in structurally higher prices for everything that Russia produces. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And of course, because Russia is that dominant supplier of these same commodities, Russia has the incentive and the ability to retaliate, to make prices even higher, drive up prices even further. So for all these reasons, these unilateral sanctions in general, but definitely the Western unilateral sanctions are not a good idea, and they're not going to help us, as we're seeing. They're
going to harm us.
Yeah.
And they're already harming us because I've been reading that the cost of living where you are in the UK has skyrocketed tremendously. And I don't have to tell you that, it will here is already starting to here. We've been shielded just a little bit, but of course it will. But tell me now, what's going on there?
Well, we recently had an increase in the price of gas. So this is 50% increase in the price of gas, basically, increasing our bills. A number of individuals have now been plunged into poverty, working poverty, because of the increase in the cost of living. And things are not looking good. And of course, it's fundamentally as a result of Russian aggression towards Ukraine. For whatever reason, I'm not going to make too much judgments about it, but it also has to do with the fact that we are trying to sanction Russia, and it doesn't trying to destroy their economy, and we're actually hurting, for the most part, ourselves. It seems like to me.
I was reading some reports, just regular newspaper reports, not actual studies or anything, but there were regular people saying, well, they have to choose now between buying. They've stopped buying fresh fruit, for instance. They're not buying vegetables anymore, and they're just gonna eat meat and starch. And we all know what that does for the health of individuals. So.
Not good. There are people in this country that they don't turn after, say, April 1st. They don't turn on the heater anymore because their life was already very precarious for them. And now we're in a scenario where the cost of living is even higher. And so, it is what it is here. And this is in a quote unquote
developed country. So this is why I'm asking you for this comparison, because I know things will start to happen, or to get a little bit worse here.
Yeah. We don't expect things to be better, and so the war needs to come to an end as soon as possible. There, in fact, like we did last week, we call for all wars, in fact, to come to an end. And these sanctions,
even if the war doesn't end, what can the world itself do not not to continue to have this economic fallout from the war? What can the rest of the countries do?
Well, short of, I'm not sure, because what I'm thinking about now is the call for relaxation of the sanctions, which is not going to happen.
Exactly. That's where I'm
Right?
at.
So what really can we do in such a short space of time? We just need to, I guess, we need to deepen the cooperation among ourselves in the South, in the global South. There are some strategic petroleum reserves in the United States that Biden has said he's going to be releasing some. Other nations have strategic resources, like the petroleum reserves. These can be released to try to mitigate against the increase in oil. OPEC can increase production, but they've already said that they're not going to. But again, further pressure can be put on them to increase production to maybe reduce the price of oil. But ultimately, we also have a problem with wheat, as we've been pointing to over the last couple of weeks, and we're going to have a food crisis as well. So there are a number of things that we can try to do, but ultimately, ending the war would be the solution to a lot of these things. And so we have to probably just bring pressure to bear and hope that maybe China can help Russia to come to the decision that they're going to pull out their troops, and yeah, probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, we wait and see. In the meantime, I see some South-South cooperation going on here in the region. I like how it's looking, but we have to do a little bit more. We have to do a lot more work with Guyana. And thankfully, we have the right government in place to do that work. That's important. And I saw it was a Trinidad the other day exporting a full container of, what was it? I can't remember the root vegetable, to someplace, can't remember, my brain getting old. But I like to see, I'm happy to see some of the things that have been starting to happen. Of course, everybody says, oh, do the little garden and stuff in the backyard. Yeah, that's all well and good, but there are other things that you need also. And I'm not sure how many people will get gardens up and running. That would be great, actually, but we know it's not really feasible sometimes. But that's where we are. Anything else before we move on to the main program?
No, I just think we can't throw our hands up in the air and do nothing.
Of course
but
not.
It does take leadership, and it does require our people to hear what our leaders have to say and to act accordingly. So if it does take every little bit would help. If it does take returning to the backyard farming, yeah, that would be a good idea. It's not going to bring down the food bill by that substantial amount, but every little bit might help. Yeah.
All right, thank you for your in-depth analysis, Money Man Tez. You have to make that. We need to make that an actual segment. Money Man Tez. Money.
If only,
Money
right?
Man Tez.
If only it made a lot. If only it were like totally true. Money Man Tez. Yeah.
Anyway, it is 17:38. Let's move on to the main program.
Okay. All right. So this week on the show we have Toney Olton. Toney Olton is a former educator, vice president of sales with a regional life insurance company, leading the sales team in 6 Eastern Caribbean territories, and a reserve officer in the Barbados Defense Force. He founded the Potter Center, a regional training and people leadership and organizational development consultancy, in 1998, and is today its executive director and principal consultant. Toney leads a team of consulting associates and serves a mix of public and private sector and non-for-profit organizations. Toney makes learning both fun and memorable, and has earned an excellent reputation for delivering training with high and sustained impact. His skills as an executive coach and motivational speaker are also highly regarded and in much demand. Toney assigns much of his personal development and competence to his as a trainer, facilitator, coach, and motivational speaker to his many years spent as a Toastmaster, and proudly bears the designation competent communicator. He regularly attends international personal development and leadership conferences. Toney Olton, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Derry. Hi, Io.
Hey, Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to share
Thank you for being here.
the work that we are doing.
Hmm?
I said thanks for the opportunity to share in the context of the work that we are doing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. Well, yes. This promises to be a very interesting conversation. Before we get on to that, though, I want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, how you got into the study and practice of emotional intelligence. And you can probably tell us what is emotional intelligence also.
Sure. What got me here? This story is now almost 30 years.
Ah, my age.
30 years old. Most people who know me, who have engaged me, know that I tell the story of at age 39 and going 40. But the time of serious reflection for me. There was a very deep sense that I had missed the mark. I hadn't quite lived up to the potential and the promise that was otherwise deposited in me. And so I made a decision that I wanted the second half of my life to be far superior to the first half.
Brilliant.
I am now in the second half of the second half. And so that quest saw me consciously and deliberately looking for opportunities to learn how I could best achieve that objective that I set for myself. And what was it? 6 years? 6 years after that, the thing I came across was in 2002, was this whole question of emotional intelligence. And so I connected with an organization by the name of 6 Seconds. We talked about that in a little while. And went up to them in October of 2002 to study and to certify in emotional intelligence. So I've been on that journey specifically as it relates to emotional intelligence since 2002. And so through continuous study and practice, I am where I am today.
Excellent. But what is emotional intelligence?
Okay. So there's several definitions for emotional intelligence. The one I have come to really use more frequently than I do others says that emotional intelligence is the skills to navigate the world as it is, not as we wish it would be.
Okay.
I like that definition, to navigate the world as it is. And so I listened in with significant interest in what Terry called your rant.
do you have anything to say about? Let's go back there.
And then Terry joined you at the end, and he treated the world issue from his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
How do we navigate what has been described by a writer as this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world? How do we navigate this? We are experiencing increasing incidents of suicide, depression. It is reported, for example, that there has been no setup within our mental hospital here, a wing that is specifically treating to young people. Yeah. We know that our educational system has proven inadequate to produce or to prepare our young people for the world as it is. If you're going to function in this very, as I said earlier, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, you need to have a set of skills. You need to have an understanding and a set of skills to effectively navigate. That set of skills, that understanding and set of skills, I believe I've come to understand, reside in the body of work now known as emotional intelligence. And social and emotional learning is the means by which we introduce students to emotional intelligence and enable them to develop their own emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence may be described as the ability to recognize, use, understand, and manage emotions in self and in others. Recognize, use, understand, and manage emotions.
So don't be like me. Don't be all savage. Just joking.
Well, you're pretty good at picking up people's emotions, so
I'm pretty good at reading people.
Yeah. Well, then, according to the definition by Mr. Olton, you are emotionally intelligent. Imagine that. Ayo is emotionally intelligent.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Well, here's what. We're also at a place today, Ayo, where we can test it. I'm serious. Just as we can assess what we call IQ, we can also assess your EQ. So that's something you and I can talk about after the show.
Okay.
So tell us a bit more about your organization.
Okay. So you referenced the Potter Center. The Potter Center is Toney Olton, the professional trainer, coach, etc. Most of my work these days is found in an organization I launched. Well, initially it was launched in April of 2019, EQ Barbados, where my focus was exclusively on Barbados. But with the advent of COVID-19 and having to come online, what that did for us was create opportunities now to engage outside of Barbados. And so we made a decision late last year and launched this year the Caribbean Institute for Social and Emotional Learning. The Caribbean Institute for Social and Emotional Learning is dedicated to having 500,000 Caribbean young people aware of and practicing emotional intelligence. We believe that if we can get a core of young people, sufficiently a core of young people aware of and practicing emotional intelligence, that we can begin that quest for Caribbean young people to take their rightful place in the world. What do we mean by that? We mean young people, and I've been playing around with some C's. You know, Stephen Covey has the 7 habits of highly effective people. I'm yet to determine the number of C's I'm going to settle on. But here's some of my C's that I've come up with so far. Young people are very, very conscious. And by that I mean who are aware of themselves in the moment. Not after the moment, but in the moment, who are highly conscious, who spend more time being in the present than they do being in the past or in the future. Young persons, here's my second C, who are also very curious. By that I mean open to learning. Part of the challenge we have in life is that we are not very curious. We operate from very,
You're describing this before. Go ahead.
We operate for very fixed positions. And I jotted a note as you both were sharing, that there's no one worldview.
This is true.
There's 7+ billion worldviews. You know, Terry, you talked about the end of war. There will never be an end to war, simply because each of us comes out of a different place and tend to only speak out of that place from which we come. In other words, we tend to be very judgmental. I'm at a place in my life where the opposite of being judgmental is to be curious. So that I have my own opinion, but I'm aware that it is my opinion. And when you share your opinion, I'm not threatened by it. Whereas I say, Terry, tell me a little bit more.
Where do sorry. Let me ask a question here before we continue from this. Because I like where you're going with this, Tony.
I love it too. I love it.
I do want to ask a question.
Sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
There's a difference between an idea and an opinion. Do you agree?
How do you see that difference?
Okay.
I'm mulling
Because
over.
an opinion is just that, but sometimes ideas, especially when manifested in large groups, can actually be harmful.
Yes, yes.
You understand where I'm
An
coming
idea,
from?
yeah, an idea,
So
an
this is,
opinion,
yeah.
differentiated. I'm still trying to wear that. My first pass
Because
is,
opinion is just an opinion. You know, you think this might be something or
but where
something,
does
but
it
then
come
we get
from?
these ideas because
But
ideas.
where does the idea come? Where does the
Well,
opinion
of
come
course,
from?
I agree that worldview. Everybody has worldviews, and those worldviews shape people's opinions, and they shape people's ideas of what should or shouldn't happen, or what should or shouldn't be. I think where I divert a little bit from you, because I do agree with you, is that I do believe that ideas can be harmful, and we've seen throughout world history where ideas have become very harmful to specific groups of people. But that's just
I also function from a place where I firmly believe that all of life is about opposites. So
all of life is
about opposites.
of course.
We operate in the world of what I call duality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so an idea that is potentially harmful may at one at the same time have good in it. I would even go further to suggest to you that it may not be the idea itself, but it may be the application of the idea that determines harm or good.
Mm-hmm.
So take, for example, the cell phone. Let's call the cell phone an idea, somebody's idea. Many of us use the cell phone for our business, to maintain our schedules, stay in contact, etc. But there are persons who use the cell phone with malintent at one at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agree.
Mm-hmm. But I think what I was probably trying to get at here is there are some ideas that are inherently, once they're promulgated, they're harmful, right? I don't think that we can think of Nazism, right, as a type of ideology. Really, is harmful. How do we go about combating, or what would be your approach to combating these types of?
Let me go back to how we got here. That there are 7+ billion views of the world. When you talk about harm, from whose perspective? Because I'm quite sure if we had the opportunity to engage Mr. Putin, he would see the good in what he's doing, even though it's causing harm to the Ukrainians, and by extension, it's going to affect the world economy and all this stuff that you guys talked about. So to my mind, it still comes back to your question of perspective. From whose perspective are you engaging? You know, Stephen Covey and the persons who engage in the game, we often quote Covey. He says, "We see the world not as it is; we see the world as we are."
As a student of political science, I'm actually inclined to agree with everything you're saying because you're actually right. But some ideas simply because history, I think, is the great decider.
Is it the idea? Hear me out. Is it the idea or is it the motive?
Ideas, motives are farmed out of ideas, I believe. So
the question
I don't know that we separate it too specific, in that way. Terry used the example of Nazism. I don't know if I can separate the idea of Nazism from the action or the application of Nazism. People died, people were baked in ovens because of this idea of what a Jew is, or what is a pure person, or what have you.
So let me take you into
this. Where ideas become very dangerous. Yeah.
So let me probably take you into a slightly deeper conversation. So question: How does emotional intelligence tie into this?
Yeah.
Every behavior has a positive intention. That's one of the things that's one of the things we talk about in emotional intelligence. That every behavior has a positive intention.
Okay.
What's your response to that?
Positive.
Sorry to reverse the roles.
Positive. It's fine. But that's who you are. You know, you do your workshops and stuff, so you can't help it. And I'm willing to comply or to take part. Every
behavior
has a
every
positive
behavior
intention.
has a positive intention.
Good. So let me just say this, being devil's advocate, not really, but just put this out
Does not need the advocate.
there. Just put this out there. Terry annoys me, and he turns up at my home, and I say, you know what, I don't know what he at my home, and I take a 2x4 and he one hit across the head, leave my house. What's the positive intention in that?
You can reach that high. You can't reach that high.
I mean, wearing heels. Good.
Okay. We're doing rain.
Go ahead. So intention in that.
Right. So my question then is, what is it about Terry that causes the annoyance? And I know we don't have a lot of time. You know, time is TikTok.
We have time. It's fine.
So let me fast forward this and say that as human beings, we function out of one of two places: the acquisition of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. So whatever you describe it as annoyance, whatever it is that Terry, his presence, whatever it is, his history with you causes that angst. To get away from that angst, right? To avoid that pain, you're going to take an action. So the action is positive on your intent, in terms of your intention.
But it harms Terry.
Yes, but it is positive from your perspective.
Okay.
That goes back to the point that I'm making about Putin.
Okay.
From his perspective, he is functioning,
positive.
He's behaving in a way with me to secure some position. Yeah, that creates in his mind, and I'm going to use the term pleasure in its very broadest sense. We could use that peace, we could use that sense of peace, that sense of power, that sense, whatever it is, he is after. He's the acquisition of some state.
Okay.
Albeit in his own mind. To the rest of us, we are going to experience the pain. Yeah, the person who tells you lies, that lie or those lies may come at some price to you, but from their perspective, they're seeking to avoid some measure of pain, albeit just in this moment. They deal with the next moment when that moment turns up.
Okay, so therefore, emotional intelligence deals mostly with understanding the world rather than taking action or changing the world. It's really more
understanding and attempted to change the world from that deeper understanding.
Okay.
Yes, but recognizing that I can't change the world, I can only seek to change the space that I occupy. And I don't seek to do that by exercising control, dominance, or by exercising force, but by exercising my own personal power.
Okay.
And so therefore becoming a person of influence in the space and spaces that I occupy.
Understood. So then, sorry, Terry, you go on.
No, do we shy away from taking absolute positions if we are to be more emotionally intelligent? So, you know, if I'm this, am I this moral relativist, or am I going to take absolute positions?
Not absolute, but principle. Not absolute positions, but principled positions.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? Because back to the question that you asked a little while ago, we can have a zillion different opinions about all the things that are going on in the world.
So I'm not a moral relativist.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
At one of the same time, there is a body of law that just governs life. And so I operate from a position of principle rather than from what you describe as a position of absolutism. Yeah. So when I'm engaged in life, one of the things I want to do is to step back and ask myself, what is the principle? What is the universal principle that is at work here? So whether I'm in Beijing or Bridgetown, whether I am white or I am black, whether I am rich or I'm poor, what is the overarching principle that is applicable in this circumstance? Perhaps the most fundamental principle that governs all of life is the law of the harvest, the law of sowing and reaping, the law of cause and effect, that nothing just happens in life. And whatever occurs in life is the result of something else. So when I apply that to my own life, I have to ask myself, okay, so when I take this action, what is going to be the outflow? So part of being emotionally intelligent is to engage in what we call consequential thinking. That is, I think about my actions before I act, because my actions have predictable outcomes. So if I'm emotionally intelligent, I contemplate what those outcomes are likely to be, and only choose outcomes that are in concert, one, with these universal principles, and two, with what I want.
Lovely. All right, so Tony's gonna have a conference coming in. He's gonna tell us a little bit more about that. But before we move on to that, I just want to go to the audience a little bit. I haven't been here all evening, so good evening to all of you. For some reason, I didn't come to you guys. Apologize for that. Good evening, Wayne. I see you're here with us. Thank you for being here. Angela is answering a bunch of questions. Angela, I don't know which questions to ask. So what's this? But I just hit Terry. I don't get that. But okay. All right. I see you're not very emotionally intelligent, Wayne. All right. So Angela is asking a question here. How do you translate this emotional intelligence to the organizational level? How do you translate this to the place of work, the workplace, really?
Brilliant. Emotional intelligence has import regardless of time, space, or circumstance. So whether I'm at home, a person who's highly emotionally intelligent, there's a certain consistency to the way they function, whether they be in their homes, whether they be in their communities, whether they be at school, whether they be at work, whether they be at play. So if I'm emotionally intelligent, a number of things. One, I think, as I said before, I think before I act. Two, I don't allow your behavior to dictate my behavior. I'm able to stand back and I'm able to stand apart from. If I'm emotionally intelligent, I don't need your carrot, I don't need your stick. So my performance is as a function, is a function of my own internal mechanism, my own sense of worth, my own sense of value, my own sense of my capacity to make a difference. If I'm emotionally intelligent, whatever circumstance I'm facing, I tell myself, this too shall pass. So I don't allow myself to be stuck in any one emotion because of something that has happened in the past. Mm-hmm. And when I face the future with a sense of optimism, right? It is temporary. It does not characterize the sum of my life. And I then ask myself, what is it that I can do? That there's something, however small, there's some action on my part that I can take to move the ball, to carry the relationship, to carry the experience forward.
Excellent. All right, so let's move on a little bit. I want you to tell us a little bit about the conference that you have coming up. When is it? Where is it? What's it called? What is it about? You know, a little bit about that.
Right, so April 20th through the 22nd, we are calling educators and educational leaders and administrators around the Caribbean to join us for 3 days to talk about, one, the leadership imperative for social and emotional learning in the Caribbean as of today. Two, how do we facilitate social and emotional learning in the classroom? That's day 2. And on day 3, how do we integrate stakeholders in this quest to promote and support social and emotional learning within the entire educational system? Social and emotional learning is not home and family life education. What's the difference? Home and family life education, the answer is in the book. Social and emotional learning, the answer is in the individual. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And so the conference is really focusing on how do we help principals and administrators in the schools, how do we help educators who engage their students every day, and how do we help policymakers and parents and the wider society join us in this quest to make or to have social and emotional learning significantly integrated into our educational system.
Interesting. Where is it going to be held? Did they make that?
It's going to be virtual. It's going to be virtual.
Okay.
Yes. So our presenters come from as far away as India. We have presenters coming out of Canada, the US, and right here in the Caribbean. There's a Caribbean practitioner out of Jamaica who is going to be very active in the experience we're going to be sharing during that week. And so we're proud to present that person as a living example of what difference, what difference social and emotional learning makes in the school system, and talk a little bit about the implementation of social and emotional learning systems.
Okay, excellent. And people can join how?
You can go to our website, not the Potter Center, but CISEL, www.cisel.org. And you click on the link there, that sends you to the registration portal. Once you've registered, the system sends you the Zoom link for the conference.
Okay, excellent.
Give us that website again.
www.cisel.org. There you go. Yes, if you click on that website, you have access to the registration link.
Excellent. All right, let's talk a little bit more about emotional intelligence and academic learning. Do we incorporate them? Do they work hand in hand, or are they separate and distinct?
Very, very integrated. All learning. And we know that all is a. You have to be very careful when you use the word all. But all learning has an emotional basis. All learning has an emotion. There's no learning absent emotion. Yeah. And so, how do we help educators in the first instance in their own awareness of their own emotional intelligence? Because emotional intelligence is learned both explicitly, that is being taught as their subject, and implicitly. So Mark has come to school and he's late this morning. And we know the ritual. He has to go to the principal's office, he has to, or somebody's office somewhere, and he has to get a late excuse. He may have the kind of parent who will write a letter explaining why he's late. He may not. He may not be in that circumstance. So once he can satisfy somebody at the front end, the bus was late or this was like, he finds some excuse. But how often are children turn up late for school because they've got some deep issues dealing with? Who notices? Yeah? Or Mark isn't quite the attentive student that we need him to be. Do we put him at the back of the class? Do we scowl? Yeah? How do we engage Mark in a way that we try to understand where he's coming from? No, I based on the question Terry asked me earlier, I could hear a question going in your mind. So does that mean we tolerate bad behavior? Not at all. Not at all. We just engage it differently. And we engage it from that place of curiosity. Yeah? Where we try to understand where Mark is coming from. No, I know the follow-up question, but I've got my geography to teach.
Right.
Or my physics. Yeah? And so I go back to the point I made earlier about implicit and explicit facilitation of social and emotional learning. One of the things critical to learning is connection, is relationship. Who was your favorite teacher at school, Terry? Don't call a name, because somebody might go off on you because I thought they were going to choose me. But think of that person. Think of that person who was your favorite teacher at school.
Right.
And let's say secondary school. You have that person in mind?
I do.
Right. Here's my question. How well did you do in that subject?
Pretty well.
Who was the teacher that you had the least time for? You have that person?
Teachers or teacher? Could
You want more than one?
it was more than one. But let me just pick one for now. Yeah, one.
Pick the one at the bottom of the pile.
Mm-hmm.
How well did you do in that subject?
Dropped it. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, teachers are
Yes.
fundamental. Yeah.
Yes, not just the teacher is fundamental, but it is the relationship.
Yeah.
It is the relationship. And specifically, how that teacher made you feel about yourself. Not just the relationship per se, but how that teacher made you feel about yourself. That teacher still taught the subject, the geography and the physics and the math, etc. But there was something about, you had that sense of connection, that sense of relationship. That's what that is what social and emotional learning is. So that a teacher who is going to facilitate a student, or who's going to facilitate students in the development of their own emotional intelligence, must inherently of themselves be emotionally intelligent.
Makes sense. Yeah. Well, what do teachers do when they have a child or a CS student that's totally disruptive, and it's hard to make that connection? Because with the best will in the world, maybe you can't make that connection. Maybe you can't interact because of maybe a lack of resources, or maybe because the person is just not having it.
Be an effective first responder. Be an effective first responder. Yeah.
What does that mean?
What that means is that when the ambulance comes out, at the end of the day, you may need surgery. But the person in the ambulance, the emergency medical technician, is able to stop the bleeding. Yeah?
Yep.
And that is a critical part in the process of your healing, that they were able in that moment in time to stop the bleeding. How do I translate that back now to educators? So I have a child who's highly disruptive. I just may be that person who is able to engage that child in a way that makes them stop and think. And by stop, and to get them to stop and think, I don't tell them anything. I just ask them questions. How are you feeling? You know, stop. Sorry, I understand. You just hit Terry and stop. Terry,
Again.
Stop checking. What exactly are you feeling in this moment? No, that may be the first time you've been asked to stop and check in with yourself. What were you feeling? Yeah.
But isn't all this a bit exhausting, a burden to place on our teachers, or to be?
And that's why I keep making the point that for social and emotional learning to take, teachers themselves, educators themselves, must of necessity be developing their own emotional intelligence. Notice I didn't say must be highly emotionally intelligent. They must be working on themselves.
Right.
And be modeling emotional intelligence. No, it's going to be even more demanding, because that modeling should really be taking place first and foremost in the home. Yeah. So to a significant degree, our educators are going to be swimming upstream, but somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do it. Can you imagine a society where the vast majority of people don't know themselves, don't care about others, don't stop to think about the effect that their behavior is going to have on somebody else? Just think about it. And we, to a significant degree, we are there. As you drive around Barbados, as you engage Barbadians into supermarkets, standing in line, wherever, you're seeing evidence more and more and more where persons are not sufficiently aware of how they're turning up, aware of how they're turning up is impacting the space that they're occupying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Everybody's looking to get ahead, albeit not everybody, but most people looking to get ahead at the expense of others, without giving due thought and consideration to others. So it is beginning to manifest. And so the school perhaps know today, and not even so much the church, because less and less people go to church, but everybody has to go to school, certainly until you're 16. So that's the last space we have in which we can bring young people together and say, guys, girls, here's a different way to see self. Here's a different way to manage self. Here's a different way to see others. Here's a different way to engage others. And that is best done now through the modeling than through the teaching.
Okay.
A quick question. Sorry, Terry, you want to say something? Go ahead.
No, I was just following up on, because obviously we are seeing a reduction in individuals going to church. And so the main institution now that we have for the indoctrination of the youth is pretty much school.
Is the school, yes.
And so would it not make, would it not also be useful to have maybe dedicated like civics courses that can try to inculcate the type of values we like to see, these mindfulness type values that we like to see in our society? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So I was making the point earlier that social and emotional learning, there's a place for teaching it as a subject. I understand that. But it is not best taught as a subject. It is best taught as a lived experience.
Okay. Point taken. I like how Terry said indoctrination and not socialization, but I'll let that slide.
And I'll give an example. I was hanging up with my kids on Thursday night. My 11 kids, they're big men with me, on Thursday night. And my son, who is now 39, he recalled an incident. I mean, it's totally out of my mind. He recalled an incident that took place. He must have been, he had been in his 20s. And he says, I want to be like you. I want to get to a place where I am like you. And what he's talking about was how I functioned in that moment. It is lost on me. Many talked about it, kind of came back, but it is lost on me how aware he responded to a particular circumstance in the moment in time, the impact that it has had on him, even after all of these years. And that's what I mean when I say that emotional intelligence is better taught as a learned experience than a set of answers in a book.
Well, I know how it has manifested with you, Tony, because I've never seen you truly flustered. And we've worked together somewhat for a bit.
That's years and years of practice. It didn't happen overnight.
I got two cuss words, and I got express myself to move on and get past the whatever it is. Like going not cuss words, but you get my point. I need to.
I guess what happens there,
get expressive.
Yeah, and so the next time a similar circumstance pops up, guess what happens?
I know how to deal with it there because of
no. He's gonna let go again.
Not necessarily. Well, I take your point. Yeah. All right. So you said earlier that you have a goal of reaching some 5,000 children.
500,000 Caribbean.
500,000 Caribbean
youth. Yes.
So I take it then that youth are your primary market, or
primary focus, not exclusive focus, but primary focus. Yes.
Okay. And where are you right now with this 500,000? How far in are you? Because there's a lot of people.
So we only launched in February.
Okay.
So right now we have connections in Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica, Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica. Yes. And we've appointed a director for the OECS expansion of our practice. All right. And eventually we're going to establish a director for the Northern and Southern Caribbean. And I said, so what COVID has done for us, because we've gone online, we can touch, or we have been touching Caribbean citizens outside of Barbados. And that is the reason why we changed our name from EQ Barbados to CISA, to the Caribbean Institute for Social and Emotional Learning, because we've begun to establish those linkages. So in another year or two, we should have a sufficient core of practitioners and educators who are able to replicate what we are currently doing here in Barbados.
Okay. And you're currently training that core people?
Yes, we are now in terms of what was to be EQ Barbados, we are now training our 10th cohort. We know that not all of them, some of them will just absorb for their own personal use.
Right.
What we're looking to do is to develop a core now of educators and facilitators who will spread out and, like I said, replicate what we're doing here locally.
Okay, excellent. Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a huge undertaking too.
It is. And one of the things they often say is that we have to practice what we preach.
Yeah.
One of the elements of emotional intelligence in the model that we use is pursue noble goals. Is the pursuit of noble goals. And those who are pursuing noble goals are those persons who are at a place in their lives where what gets them up every morning is something larger than themselves. And it has to be so large that you know you cannot achieve it on your own.
Or within your lifetime. I heard somebody say that.
Or within your lifetime. Yes. Thanks so much for that. Or within your lifetime. So you need to assemble people. You need to bring people together. Yeah? Share with them that vision that you have. Get them to buy into that vision and then release. And we've been really, really blessed. We have an excellent CEO who's done an excellent job of keeping the team together, keeping the team focused.
Who's the CEO?
Sharon Howell.
Okay.
Sharon is now a retired woman, and so she has the time, but more than the time, she has the commitment and the energy and needed to lead the team. And she's doing an excellent job of that. And that team now, we've been together now 2 years. And we now stand at 20. And some of that 20 are outside of Barbados. Yes. And only today I got a call from some person who's on the current cohort wants to join the faculty. So it has begun to happen. I just have
How big is the faculty, if I may ask?
20. We have 20 at the moment.
20. Okay.
Yes. I would hope that in another year, 2 years, we have that up to 50 or 60 persons. Okay. By that I mean beyond the training that we do for the practitioner, that I've spent significant time with them, helping them to understand and deepen their own personal practice, but understand the method and practice of facilitating others in the development of their own emotional intelligence.
Okay, understood. Very interesting stuff, Tony. I like where you're going with this. So at this point, what I was trying to understand though, so you're working with students. Do you do it like workshops, or do you do it in the school, or do you do it like workshops outside of the regular school?
So we have a number of things going on. Most of our work today has been with adults. In 2019, we actually worked with 256 teachers drawn from across the Barbadian schools. Obviously, with COVID 2020 and 2021, we weren't able to bring off that training. We're gonna be doing that this year. This month, we're going to be offering some training, social emotional learning training or learning for students. Those dates aren't in my head at the moment, but one of our faculty, Rachel Cheeseman, she's leading the team that will facilitate training for students during this Easter vacation. Yeah. Our focus in the main though is to be able to engage the teachers. And like I said, we're going to be putting on beyond the conference that we're doing this month. We're going to be looking to put on training, educator training during the summer vacation, summer holidays.
Excellent. But that's the teachers and not the students. So where do the students come in?
Yeah, there is a place for us to engage students, but our focus initially is going to be on the teachers.
Okay, you haven't got that. Understood.
As you one of you said earlier, teachers are going to be hard pressed initially to jump in because, oh man, you want me to do this too? It is to persuade them, hey, you know.
I totally understand it.
You can, as a teacher, I can tell you,
So the challenge is to persuade educators, look, if you really truly understand emotional intelligence, if you begin to practice emotional intelligence, your job becomes easier. Your job becomes easier. And one of the things that will facilitate your job in becoming easier is that you're going to be able to build rapport with your students. Yeah.
So what are some of the signs and, I guess, consequences of a lack of emotional intelligence? I guess you were speaking to it before, you know.
Open your eyes. It's all around us.
The society.
It's all around us. You know what got us going? In 2019, the murder rate in Barbados just began to skyrocket. We had an incidence of murder in Barbados that we'd never had before. And so what that told me was, if our murder rate is increasing, there must be significant social dysfunction because murder is at the extreme end. There must be significant social destruction happening below that. What's turned up on the radar has to be, yeah. I mentioned earlier the increased incidence of suicide, of reports of depression, of bullying. Yeah, bullying is a significant indicator of the lack of emotional intelligence. Yeah, and so it is all around us. It is all around us. If you talk about the ZR culture, it is all around us. Right? If you talk about road rage, it is all around us. If you talk about the lack of courtesy, if you talk about the lack of service, I mean, service excellence in Barbados, it is all around us. Yeah, we're not sufficient. We're disconnected from ourselves, and because we're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from others. Yes.
But do we have any examples of good or excellent emotional intelligence? Do we have any of that in society? So we know we have some issues with regards to this emotional intelligence idea. Are there any exemplars of good emotional intelligence out there?
So we had the incident last week of the student from the Dayton Griffith School.
Returning the wallet.
Yes. Right. That was a moment of expression of it being emotionally intelligent. Consequential thinking. I notice how I frame it because I don't know the young man. I don't know the young man.
I am smiling at Angela. She's right.
Yes.
And saying, yeah.
I saw Angela just now. She says Chris Walker is a good example. You remember earlier I said to you that there's 7+ billion word views? Of all the stuff that I saw last week having to do with the Chris Rock and Will Smith incident, one caught my eye. And that one caught my eye because that is where my head is at. It was an excellent.
That's the one you identify with. Yes,
it's the one I identify with. Because you always find what you're looking for.
Yep.
You always find what you're looking for. And so Angela says, Chris Walker is a good example. This particular piece that I saw, the person, whatever length of time that was, let's say it was a minute. That person took 15 to 20 minutes to break down that 1 minute of experience, focus exclusively on body language. I'll send it to you when we're finished. Focusing exclusively on body language.
What was the takeaway?
The takeaway
Mhm.
was the focus on Chris Rock, not on Will Smith. That Will Smith's behavior was a demonstration of the absence of emotional intelligence. And notice what I'm saying very carefully. It was a demonstration in the moment of an absence of emotional intelligence. Chris Rock's behavior, on the other hand, in the moment, was a demonstration of emotional intelligence. And this particular clip
The
that I
moment
saw,
of the slap, or the moment before the slap.
Probably moments after the slap.
the moment after, right? He even focuses on the fluttering of Chris Rock's eyes, the movement of his left hand.
Because some people would argue he wasn't very emotionally intelligent in the lead up to the slap.
That is why I said to you, in the moment of the slap, yes, it is a demonstration of emotional intelligence. And this particular person focused on his behavior, including the left hand and the right hand, so that the right hand seemed to be coming up ready for a clench, but it doesn't quite go to full clench. And so, focusing purely on body language, he was able to interpret what was going on in Chris Rock's mind. And the conversation he deduced based purely on body language, and we are taught that the body language is 55% of one's communication. Body language is 55%, tone is 38%, the words themselves only 7%. So focus exclusively on the body language of Chris Rock. He was able to deduce what was going on in his mind. And the conversation that he deduced going on in Chris Rock's mind was an emotional, intelligent conversation.
Okay.
Whatever you think about the experience, whatever you think about the incident, it was a beautiful exposition of emotional intelligence, purely from that perspective.
Point taken.
Anything, Ayo?
Yeah, there was a question here that I saw from Wayne again. He was asking, is there a public education component to what you're doing, Tony? Saying that your target is students, youth who are part of family units that are not into these types of self-development practices.
Right. So our first pass, and when we said EQ Barbados, we asked that persons who did our training, one of the commitments they made, we asked them to make, was that they would now go back into their homes and into their communities and be advocates or promoters of emotional intelligence. Now, it's going to become difficult. It has become difficult to track that. But everything that I know tells me that most people are reactive.
Yeah.
In other words, most people let other people's behavior dictate how they behave. And so the persons who engage us, our first pass is that they will go back into their homes, into their communities, into their schools, wherever they occupy time and space. And now by the way they live their lives, become influencers of others to themselves, now become emotionally intelligent. We have been talking about how do we get into communities. Of course, we were significantly undermined over the last 2 years, COVID, and we know how that's gone. But we do have discussions, and we've had discussions, and we are about to make plans that now that we seem to be opening back up, that we're going to go into communities and carry the message of emotional intelligence. What is the message of emotional intelligence? One, that all of life is about choices. Fundamentally, all of life, every moment of life is a moment in which you get to make a choice. And essentially about three things in your life: what to think, what to feel, and what to do. And so are you going to spend the rest of your life blaming your mother, your father, the community, the government? Or are you going to now take responsibility for your choices and step out in ways that allow you to live a different life experience, have a different life experience? So that is in the offing, where we are going to be going into the communities now that, like I said, we're opening back up and seeking to have those conversations, those experiences, creating those learning experiences for members of our communities.
All right. Angela is asking, I want Tony A. Olton, before he goes, oh, you know who he is, before he goes, to explain mindfulness, how it can help in schools, not replace praise, but can help in schools, mindfulness. And we had a whole conversation, a whole national conversation on mindfulness. And I do remember you posting something quite interesting on the topic around that time. I don't know if you want to respond to Angela on that.
Absolutely. And thanks for the question, Angela. It was unfortunate how the issue of mindfulness rose to prominence in our public discourse. Here's my understanding of mindfulness. Mindfulness says that I become intentional, I become deliberate in not spending all of my time on the treadmill of life. What do I mean by that? I'm just going through the routine. I get up, whatever it is I do on mornings, I come down the road, I punch the clock, I go through the day, I clock out, I go back home, and go through the same motion. Mindfulness for me is the practice of being in the present. Being in the present, I have an awareness that I'm always adequate because I'm here in this moment. When I spend time in the past, I'm living life with regret. I'm living life with guilt. When I face the future without clearly defining what I want the future to be about, I live life of fear. I live a life of fear. Mindfulness says, in the moment, I notice, I pay attention, and I notice what is happening to me. So let me stick a pin and talk about, first of all, what are emotions? Emotions are chemical responses to stimulus, to something that has happened, either on the outside of me or on the inside of me. Those chemicals are released either because of something outside of me or because of my own thoughts. That chemical release, cortisol, GABA, adrenaline, noradrenaline, the whole range of them, only has a life of 3 to 6 seconds. So when I see you approaching me with waving that big stick you talked about earlier, Ayo.
A big stick, a 2x4.
She was approaching me, remember? She was approaching me.
I know how I'm very specific.
When I see you approaching me with that 2x4, something is going to happen on the inside of me in parts of a second.
I can run.
And you will run faster than you could possibly run absent the 2x4. Why? Because your body is going to produce something called adrenaline. It's going to move all the blood from your extremities, from your stomach, etc., and send it to your extremities. Yeah? I was part of a discussion some time ago, or learning experience some time ago, and the presenter made a very interesting point. That adrenaline allows you to escape the bear in the jungle. What happens when that bear comes home every night? Where do you run and go? And that bear is your father. And you're a 13-year-old female. What happens when that bear comes home every night? After a while, our body builds up those automatic responses. Yeah? Mindfulness alerts me as to what is happening in the moment and gives me the opportunity to make a choice about how I treat to that emotional response. In the absence of mindfulness, I'm going to repeat the behavior that I repeated yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. And by repeating the same behavior over and over, I'm going to have a consistent outcome, a consistent result. Mindfulness creates the opportunity for me to notice what is happening in the moment, step back and step outside of it, become the observer, and ask myself, what choices do I have? And I gave you the essential core three: to think, to feel, to do. And I asked that question in the context of, what is it that I want? So mindfulness is not some hocus pocus, Eastern, that's how we've been conditioned to understand it. Mindfulness simply says, I seek as best as I can in the moment to notice what is happening to me.
So it's not from Islam then?
To become the conscious observer of myself.
Yeah, people were saying that they're bringing Islam into Barbados. People go some places with their conclusions.
Yeah.
You know,
people were saying that. Oh my God.
we have two eyes. Here's the real challenge, guys. We have two eyes, and we spend so much of our time looking out. We spend so much of our time minding other people's business.
Drink water and mind your business.
We know who's coming. Drunk or sober.
Mind your business.
We know who's coming. We know who's going. We know what time they come. We know what time they left. You can imagine she's do this. You can imagine he's do that, and blah, blah, blah. We don't spend sufficient time looking in. Looking in is mindfulness. Yeah?
Agreed. All right. So, Kenneth Connell, lovely to see you here, Doc. He said, great show on EA. Is there coaching available for students, example, medical students in small groups?
I believe Kenneth has my number. He can give me a buzz. If he doesn't have my number, he knows where you can find me. Yes, there is. Coaching is available, both for students as well as for educators. Yes.
So how do people who don't have your number get in contact with you to get coaching for groups?
Right. So there you go. Email address is admin@theportercenter.com, or you can WhatsApp me at 246-266-2628. 246-266-2628.
Excellent. Okay. Angela is saying it's interesting that Angela is saying this, you need to speak to community leaders, local community leaders. They can help the younger ones, because I was actually thinking, do you engage politicians in some of this emotional intelligence?
Not directly. Not directly, not as yet.
Okay. Are you thinking of holding some workshops and
we are currently formulating a paper.
Okay.
That we want to send forward.
All right. I can
say I don't want to attend any of these workshops, but I want to improve my emotional intelligence. What are some of the things that I can do?
Right. So first of all, we will send you to the website of our partner, 6seconds.org. 6seconds.org. You can use the number 6seconds.org. They have a wealth of resources that are available that are free, and there are also any number of training programs that you can get involved in all on that website. Everybody knows it. 6seconds.org. Yes.
The number 6 or the word?
Either will work. That's right. But then you're good to go. 6seconds.org. You can register there. It's free, and there's a wealth of resource available, emotional intelligence available, information available at that website. And like I said, in addition to courses that you can register for and actually become certified as emotional intelligence educator, practitioner, assessor, facilitator, coach.
Okay.
All those certifications are available.
Excellent. And Rachel Cheeseman has posted a link to the upcoming conference in the comment section. So
Right.
it's also on the same website.
Rachel is our social media lead, and also the person who's leading our youth engagement.
Okay, well, she's on the ball here with the link, so she's
Yes. Hi, Rachel.
definitely your social media lead. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to the show. Excellent. Good stuff. There was a question I wanted to answer just now. Oh God, I'm getting old. I'm getting old.
Take your time. Take your time.
At 30? Come on, Ayo. Come on.
It's the coffee.
Definitely the
Oh gosh,
coffee.
what was it? Oh jeez, I hate.
While you're gathering your thoughts, I could just ask
Yeah.
one more. So how do I know if I have emotional intelligence? So how will I know that?
For me, the first pass is a difference in your effectiveness, both with yourself and with others. A difference. You should notice a difference. A person who's emotionally intelligent, highly emotionally intelligent, becomes more predictable, become more consistent, become more reliable, becomes more trustworthy. Yeah. Is a lot more tolerant, ask a lot more questions. They ask more than they tell. They're a lot more compassionate. They're better able to build connections. They're more collaborative in their engagements. Boy, and I finally got up my C's.
Oh, these are the C's.
Yes, yes. I'm still working on the final list, but those are the ones that have occurred to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember now. So the question, you were saying that there are people that people can go to the website and they can do the courses and so forth.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that you look for a specific type of person who join your organization.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
No. We meet you where you are.
Okay.
I see, and that's the beautiful thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I may never learn to play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely will never be a surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
but I can become emotionally intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody, anywhere, all things being equal, can shift the course of their life by becoming emotionally intelligent. What does that mean? 8 things. 1, I develop emotional literacy, meaning that I have language to express and explain away what is happening to me on the inside, my emotions. 2, I'm fully cognizant of my patterns, and I understand what of my patterns allow me to be effective, what of my patterns are undermining my effectiveness with myself and with others. 3, I think before I act. I create time and space to allow me to think, to integrate my emotional brain and my cognitive brain and make decisions that are in my best interests. 4, I don't allow myself to stay in any one emotional state, especially if that emotional state is going to lead to my ineffectiveness. We call that I'm able to navigate my emotions, or I'm able to delay gratification. That's what we used to call it. 5, I'm intrinsically motivated. As I said earlier, I don't need your carrot, nor do I need your stick. Right? I can turn up and I can give my best, do my best, because that is who I am. What you do with it is your business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And 6, I engage life from the perspective of being optimistic. I'm always hopeful. I always know that this too shall pass.
That's not me.
Number 7, when I engage others, I do so from a position of empathy. What does that mean? I seek to understand. I seek to understand where the other is coming from.
And not sympathy, but empathy, right?
And the two are different.
Yep.
Empathy means that I don't have to have the experience, but I can linger long enough. I can linger long enough with you, right? The language we use is, I can hold space sufficient to allow you to share yourself, that I'm able to translate. Ah, wow.
I can put myself in your shoes.
Yes, yes, yes. And to do that, I have to be able to shut my thinking down, turn it off for a while, and try to understand where you're coming from, try to understand your thinking. Not to project myself onto you, but to be able to say, okay, so what I hear you saying is, you seem to think, you seem to feel. Did I capture you correctly? Yeah? And the 8th one is one I mentioned earlier. How do I know that I'm emotionally intelligent? I live a life that is more than what scripture calls meat and drink. What I'm going to eat and drink today. I live a life that is consumed with, how do I make a difference? How do I add value? How is time, place, and circumstance different significantly because I turned up? And that sense is a sense, as we said earlier, that is larger than myself, and as you added, cannot be achieved in my lifetime. Big picture. That's how I will know. And sustain over an extended period of time.
Do your programs, I say programs, one of a better term, because I'm not sure what the term would be, but your sessions or what have you, do they differ in terms of the material that is delivered based on the group that you're delivering to? For instance, if you're delivering to school children, is the material differ? Would the material differ as opposed to if you were making a presentation, let's say at the prison?
Yes. So that the examples, the tools that we use will be different depending on age group and all those variables, but the concepts will be the same. Okay. Yeah. For social emotional learning day back, three Fridays back, we worked with students out of the Good Shepherd School and the West Terrace School. And one of the exercises we gave them was to make medals, friendship medals. And in making that medal, you have to identify the person you want to make the medal for, and what is it about this person that you value. And then, and then you have to design and not polish, but embellish, because you want to take this medal now and give it to the person. And in that specific experience, one of the groups, 2 of the students from Good Shepherd, chose each other as that person that they wanted to give, and it was a powerful experience where they then exchanged their medals. It is an example of what I mean when I say that social and emotional learning is a lived experience and not a book experience.
Understood.
Yeah. One of the exercises asks the students to contemplate what is happening with the person being bullied, but equally what is happening with the person who's the bully. And at 9 or 10 years old, it was amazing what came out of them, that they were able to contemplate what was happening with individuals at the emotional level and what their needs were.
Understood. But I know you mentioned West Terrace and a couple. Who are some of the organizations and stuff that you've worked with in Barbados so far?
Good heavens! You
can just give us some of the more topical or popular names that we know.
I've been all over the place. I've been really blessed in my life to work with a number of private sector organizations, public sector organizations. I was just part of public service HR week. I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with a whole host of organizations, both in Barbados and outside of Barbados. I do a lot of work that is gratis, that is pro bono. I mean, a lot. 50% of my work time is spent in pro bono or gratis work. because the need for emotional intelligence and social emotional learning is critical if we're going to change the trajectory in which Barbados is currently headed.
Agreed. Well, it was lovely having you here, Tony. Another question before we wrap up, though. As I was here thinking, but I think I know you well enough that I can ask you this question, right? Because you know my intentions, right, Tony?
Yes.
My intentions are always pure, regardless.
Okay. Yes.
But I was just very curious about like romantic relationships. Do they improve with, or I don't know if you want to give your personal experience, or if you can give me, experiences of others or reports or whatever. But do they improve when people go through this type of training? Do those romantic relationships improve? Because we talk a lot about relationships at work, professional relationships in the school, other interpersonal relationships. But what about romantic relationships?
Good.
And I'm asking, I'm single, and I'm finding
I hear you. I as your people would say, I feel you.
We empathize with you, Ayo.
Yes, yes.
I've never been happier. Thank you so much for your empathy.
They set up the potential for
being
emotionally intelligent will set up the potential for, but it says, can two walk together unless they agree? Right? I like the way Les Brown puts it. He says, when two people walk together, one will always adjust to the pace of the other. Whose pace are you adjusted to? So my answer to your question is yes, potentially.
Potentially.
Yes, potentially. But both must be walking on that same. What's his name? TD Jakes. I like the way he puts it. He says you want your relationship to be, the two persons or the people in a relationship to be different, but headed in the same direction, are headed for the same destination. EQ sets up the potential for that to happen.
Okay.
But because we're human beings with the power of choice, each of us gets to make a choices to what we do with it.
I was laughing, but it's a very serious question, because I do see a space for a lot of work with people, because I don't know if there's any training, any relationship training, marriage training. When you're going to get married, you're supposed to go and get counseling and stuff. But I mean, that's very limited. So, and I don't know that we do a lot of training and stuff with people in relationship generally, except when they go to a therapist, basically. And we do not have a culture of therapizing in Barbados.
Because it is treated as a sign of weakness.
Precisely. It's just not in our culture to that extent. Our younger generations are embracing it a lot more, which is an excellent thing. But it's just not in our culture specifically. So I do see a area there, and I'm giving you a very good business idea, Tony, where you can literally brand a course, a relationship course. I'm so serious, Terry. Stop laughing. I'm so serious.
I'm not laughing.
Because I do think it is necessary, and it will reduce a lot of the conflict and the abusive situations and stuff, or it should, that we come across.
Here's a comment I get consistently, and I've gotten consistently over the years. Why did they teach me this when I was a lot younger?
There you go.
That's a question we get consistently, group after group. Why nobody ever taught me this stuff earlier?
And I think we started this conversation like that, or maybe we were talking today. Was it talking there, or you started anyway? But you were saying, I do remember you saying at some point that a lot of what we learn by watching. We're socialized into it, but we're not necessarily taught into it. We're not intentional, basically, in passing on information. Like, we learn to cook by watching mommy cook. So we cook the same way, and our food has the same flavor because we watch it dashing that and dashing that and dashing that. So we dash it in too. It must be working, and we figure it out. but there's no intentional, come, let me teach you where you put the rice in 2 cups of water to 1 cup of rice. That doesn't happen realistically, right? That does not happen. So I do get what you're saying, and I think that yeah, I like what you're doing.
You've hit the nail on the head.
And keep it up. Thank you for coming. We love you here.
Thank you for having me as well. Thank you for having me as well. I wish you guys all the very best as you continue in this endeavor. I've seen you growing in leaps and bounds, as they say. Like the use of technology, and I like how you engage your guests.
Well, thank you very much, Tony.
Continue success.
Thank you so much, and you too.
All the best,
Terry,
guys.
don't just hang up. We just close out. Terry, anything before we go?
No, I think we'll just leave it there. Thanks, Tony, for coming. Thanks to the audience as usual for being here and supporting us. Very interesting discussion, and hopefully we can all grow and develop more in terms of our IQ and EQ.
Yeah. I know Tony couldn't give his last words just now before I asked him for his last words, excuse me. So I don't know, would you like to make any last words?
Yes. Visit us at our website, scisil.org or thepartycenter.com, or our email address, or WhatsApp number 246-266-2628, and join us in this journey of enabling a different and better society, both within Barbados and in the wider Caribbean. Scripture says that the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. We're looking for some good laborers.
Always, yes. Always looking for good laborers.
Yes.
Me too, Tony. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, as we come to a close, right? Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us. Thank you, audience, those of you who came over and joined us, those of you who came back and joined us. Thank you so much, and for sharing your ideas, your comments, questions, everything. And as I always say, I know you have choices, so thank you for being here. And if you're here and you're new, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share this page and invite your friends to join us here next Sunday at 5 p.m. And of course, live long and prosper.
You're watching Just Politics, Our Worldview. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at JP, Our Worldview. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash the notification bell so you'll know when we upload new content. Join us next time.